In the days of the ancient temple, there were different courts set apart for different kinds of worshipers. The outer court was open for all. The inner court was reserved for the priests. And at the very center was the Holy of Holies, a sacred place where only the high priest could enter once a year. Prayer also has such dimensions. It's not just one flat practice, there are deeper levels. Yet many believers never step beyond the very first stage. In this teaching, I'll walk you through 5 powerful levels of prayer that every Christian should know. 1. The prayer of petition. First and most basic type of prayer is the prayer of petition. This is when we come before God with our needs, asking for provision, protection, healing, guidance, or blessing. It's important, it's biblical, and it's often the starting point of prayer life. But here's the danger: many never move past this stage. If prayer is only about God, give me this, then it becomes more like a spiritual vending machine. When God doesn't respond the way we want, frustration sets in. Petition prayer is necessary, but it should never be the final destination. True growth comes when we learn that prayer is not only about what we need, but also about what God desires. 2. The prayer of intercession. The next level is intercessory prayer. This is where maturity begins to show. Intercession is standing in the gap for others, praying on their behalf, carrying their burden before God. Scripture says in Ezekiel 22:30 that the Lord looked for someone to stand in the gap, but found none. Intercessors are those who respond to that call. The beautiful thing is this: when you sincerely pray for someone else, God often works in your own life in the same area. Intercession is selfless, sacrificial, and powerful. It aligns you with God's heart because you're not just asking for yourself, you're reflecting His love for others. 3. The prayer of warfare. This is where things get serious. Spiritual warfare prayer is not about attacking people, it's about confronting the invisible forces of darkness that oppose God's plans. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. In warfare prayer, you take up the authority Jesus gave in Luke 10:19 to trample over the enemy. This includes binding and loosing as Jesus described in Matthew 18:18. Some breakthroughs don't come until you step into this kind of prayer, because demonic resistance tries to delay answers, just like Daniel's prayer was delayed for 21 days. Daniel 10. Warfare. Prayer requires spiritual maturity, faith, and being clothed with God's armor. It's not casual, it's battle. 4. The prayer of prophecy. Prophetic prayer goes beyond reacting to situations. It declares God's will into reality. It is praying God's future into today. Jeremiah 1:12 says that God watches over His word to perform it. That means when His people speak His promises in prayer, heaven moves. This kind of prayer requires intimacy with God. You must know His heart to pray His will. Instead of focusing only on problems, you release God's solutions. Romans 4:17 speaks of calling things that are not as though they were. Prophetic prayer carries authority, and it can shift families, nations, and even history itself. 5. The prayer of intimacy. Contemplative prayer. The highest level is the prayer of communion. This is not about asking, fighting, or even declaring. It's about being. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." This is where prayer becomes less about words and more about presence. Jesus often withdrew to lonely places just to be with the Father. Luke 5:16. In this place, you stop seeking answers and simply seek God Himself. His presence becomes the answer, the peace, and the transformation. At this level, prayer is silent, deep, and transformative. You're not just speaking to God, you're being changed by Him. Closing thoughts. These 5 levels of prayer build on one another. Petition is the beginning, but maturity takes you further into intercession, into warfare, into prophetic declaration, And finally, into deep communion with God. Many stay at the first level because the higher ones require sacrifice. Intercession requires compassion. Warfare demands courage. Prophetic prayer needs revelation. And intimacy requires stillness. But those who grow into all five experience God in ways beyond imagination. Prayer is not a ritual. It's a journey into the heart of God.